What's up, vinyl community? It's your boy Chris coming at you live from the man cave. Earlier today in my DMs on my Instagram profile, I got a question from a friend of mine, from a follower, who just asked me, so, what's your opinion on jazz live albums? And immediately it hit me. And I basically just responded back exactly what I'm going to use this video and this platform to respond to you guys now is, in my opinion, there are no better live albums in music, period, than jazz live albums. None. I don't care. You take the most well-renowned rock and roll live album of all time, The Who Live at Leeds, the Allman Brothers, Fillmore. I don't care. Take any of them. I would rather have a really good live jazz album over them, easy. And it doesn't even have to be like the best live jazz album. It has to be like middle of the pack. I'd still take that. Reasons being are pretty simple. Number one, the setting for the performance is always somewhere a little more secluded, a little more cozy of a venue, so the acoustics, the sound's going to be better naturally. Number two, the audience and the fan base that tend to frequent a jazz live performance are going to be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more there just to enjoy the artistry and the musicianship. They're not going to want to make any unnecessary noise that's going to maybe distract these masters of their crafts from doing what it is that they're there to see them do that night. And then there's always the whole thing when you go see a band, when you go see a rock and roll band live, is does the singer sound as good live as he does in the studio? And most of the time, let's just be honest, guys. No bullshit. Most of the time, the answer to that is no. Because not every rock and roll vocalist is Freddie Mercury. Most of these guys, I mean, some of them are close enough, but most of them, it's like night and day between listening to their studio shit and between listening to their live shit. So there's always that. You don't have to worry about Art Blakey not being as good a drummer live as he was in the studio. You don't have to worry about Lee Morgan not being as good and talented of a trumpeter live as he is in the studio. You don't have to worry about that when you go see a jazz live performance. So for me, automatically, with live jazz music, you've got the acoustics from the settings. You've got the more relaxed vibe of the audience there to see the live jazz performance. You've got the no worries again of you know, a lead singer not sounding as good, because there is no freaking lead singer. And it's just all of it just adds up, to me, to a better live album experience. Most of my favorite jazz live albums, I would put over an extreme portion of my studio jazz albums. Plenty of them. And for this video, inspired by this question earlier today on Instagram, I just wanted to run you through a stack of 10 or so of my all-time favorites. So, going right for it. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, A Night in Tunisia. This is an original mono press. Excuse me, original stereo press. My bad. I get so used to saying original mono press because I have, but yeah, original stereo press. 47 West 63rd Street labels. A real beauty. One of my prized pieces of my entire collection, not just of my jazz collection or not just of my jazz live collection. It's a phenomenal, amazing record all the way around. Lee Morgan on the trumpet, Wayne Shorter on the sax, Bobby Timmons on the piano, Jimmy Merritt on the bass, Mr. Art Blakey on the drums. Absolutely phenomenal record. Next up, decided to go with one. I've read a lot of publications that rate this as the greatest live jazz album of all time. And I'm certainly not willing to go there, but I will say it's freaking great. And you can find it for cheap. Even the original presses. Earlier today I had two. Just a few hours ago I had two. I have one now. but I had to just a few hours ago. Duke Ellington, Newport. Again, I've read a lot of lists that rank this as the greatest jazz live album of all time. And it is marvelous. It is just amazing in every way. Phenomenal sound. My pressing is an original Columbia 6i mono. I really, really love it. I actually haven't listened to it in a really long time. I need to fix that soon. My next one is a recent find. Many of you watching it might not even be familiar with it. But damn it, that's one of my pride and joys of doing these videos, is to maybe hip you guys to some of this shit that you're not familiar with, or point you in the direction of some heaters that maybe you're not aware, or, familiar with, or that maybe you want to, kind of delve into. And this is another one that, again, is not going to break your pockets. You can find a really good pressing of this, a really original pressing, an original pressing of this one for relatively cheap. The Wynton Kelly Trio, Wes Montgomery, Smoking at the Half Note. Original mono on Verb. Guys, this is a freaking phenomenal record. I was listening to it the other day, and it had been a while since I had listened to it, but I threw it on the other day because I wanted something chill while I was cleaning the house. So I got a stack of chill clean the house records, no shit. And I threw this one on, and it's just so unbelievable. Very chill vibe throughout. Wes Montgomery was just a masterful guitarist, and it's got, Wes on the guitar, Wynton Kelly on the piano, Paul Chambers on the bass. Paul Chambers played on so many freaking great records, it's insane, guys. And if you don't believe me, just a little bit later when you get bored, just Wikipedia Paul Chambers. Tell me what you find. Next up, another one of my personal favorites. For my all-time favorite jazz trumpeter, you guys know my affinity for the legendary Lee Morgan. Live at the Lighthouse, Hermosa Beach, California. 2 LP set on Blue Note. Guys, Lee torches this. He flat out sets this set on fire. And it's a focus Lee. He's happy at this stage in his life. He's off drugs. He's sober and focused and relentless. And sorry, guys. This makes me sad because when I think of this record, there's two things for me. The first thing I take away from it is, it's a phenomenal freaking record. That's the first thing I take away from it. The second thing I take away from it is, man, what all do we have to come from Lee Morgan? What other classics was he due to make? He sounds at the top of his form here. And again, sober, focused, relentless, back on the scene. And there's no doubt in my mind we had many, many, many more good years, many, many more great years from the legendary Lee Morgan. And, his life was tragically cut short, as many of you know. And for those of you who don't know, or maybe don't know about the demise of Lee Morgan, if you peep my Tales from the Nightclub, part 1 is actually on Lee Morgan and his unfortunate early demise. But one of my very favorite live records. A classic. Get it into your life, guys. Next for me, I'm going to go with a big band setting. And I have to throw in Thelonious Monk, obviously. This is a phenomenal record. The Thelonious Monk Orchestra at Town Hall. I think I would go as far as to call this the greatest live big band jazz album of all time. Absolutely phenomenal. My copy's an original mono. Thelonious Monk on the piano, Donald Byrd on the trumpet, Eddie Burt trombone, Phil Woods alto sax, Charlie Rouse, tenor sax, Pepper Adams, baritone sax, Robert Northern, French horn, Jay McAllister, tuba, Sam Jones, bass, Art Taylor, drums, recorded in concert in New York City, February 28th, 1959. So good. So incredibly good. And Monk is a master, and one of the long list of artists that if I could have a chance to go back and see live, I would. Phenomenal. I recommend it to anybody. And this is another one of those ones that really can be found relatively cheap. You know, I know some people's definition of cheap is different than my definition of cheap. I do understand that, but for me, if you're a jazz collector, guys, if you're a jazz collector, that's a cheap record. How about that? How about I base it on that? Next up is the album I literally just pulled off my turntable right before I sat down to do this video. Dizzy Gillespie at Newport. In my opinion, you can make a serious argument for this one as the greatest live jazz record ever. A serious argument. Really serious argument for it. Features a young Lee Morgan, a very young Lee Morgan, like a 17 or 18-year-old Lee Morgan. I can't remember which one it is. But he smokes on this. So does a young Wynton Kelly. So many others. This is just a phenomenal record. Benny Golson's on this one. So many. It's a huge ensemble on this album. And I love every note. And I find myself returning to it frequently, and I highly recommend it. Give it into your life, guys. Next up for me was an album I listened to 2 records ago. Round about midnight at the Cafe Bohemia by the great Kenny Dorham. If you look up underrated in the dictionary in jazz terminology, you'll find Kenny Dorham. So freaking underrated and played on so many great records. And this one for me is no exception. This is I've had a hell of a day. My wife and daughter are asleep. I'm not tired yet. I've got a couple hours to myself, and I've got a new bottle of bourbon kind of record. That's what this is for me. And that's what it was for me about an hour and a half ago. I had about 2 glasses worth of Irish whiskey. And I had this record, and I threw it on, and I just went to that same lane I always go to every time I listen to it. And it's freaking phenomenal, guys. I highly recommend it. My copy is not original, but it is a really stellar Japanese pressing from, I think, 80 or 81. I'm not positive. Kenny Dorham on the trumpet, obviously. Gerald Monteros on the tenor sax. Kenny Burrell, I love Kenny Burrell on the guitar. Bobby Timmons on piano, obviously. I freaking love Bobby Timmons. Sam Jones on the bass, and Arthur Edgehill on the drums. You got to get it into your life, guys. I don't care what format you use it, but preferably vinyl, obviously. Next one up, because I'm not about to do any kind of list of any sort on jazz and not throw Train in, because Train's my favorite, obviously. I'm never going to go without doing Train. So Coltrane live at the Village Vanguard. On this one, don't let my cover fool you. The cover's not that sharp. The freaking ring wear. Obviously, anytime you have a majority, black, dark cover on a record like this, and some aging, a lot of times you have the problems with the ring wear. Which is one of the many reasons I take my records out. I put them in my MoFi sleeves and I put them in the back. So that eliminates that. Obviously this record's going in terms of that, but it eliminates the process of that, and the splitting and the constant removal of the record can do damage to the cover. So I'm not a pioneer of that technique. Obviously, I got it from someone online. I just can't remember who, or I'd shout them out, but I thought it was a great idea and I ran with it. But again, great record on impulse. John Coltrane on the soprano sax, Eric Dolphy on the bass clarinet, McCoy Tyner on the piano, Reggie Workman on the bass, and the great Elvin Jones on the drums. It's just an outstanding live record. And then there's also Live at the Village Vanguard again, another freaking stellar record. And the next couple that I'm getting ready to show you are also a couple that I just listened to recently. By recently, meaning a couple of hours ago. One of them not even a couple of hours ago. Pop a top again. I wonder if there's any way, if I could contact some of these breweries and whatnot around the country, if I could get sponsorship for these. What do you think? Any chance that lovely Palmetto Brewing Company in Charleston, South Carolina will cut me a check? No? It's the place of my birth, after all. How about maybe just a free beer when I come back down to Choctaw? Just a thought. I'm not beyond asking for it, just so you guys know. I digress. It wouldn't be me if I didn't ramble on, guys. For those of you who've watched several of my videos by now, you know that. Alright, anyway. Arguably, my favorite live jazz album of all time. Arguably. It's, dear God, it's up there. So many of my favorite jazz musicians on one set. A Night at Birdland. This is volume 1. This is an original mono press. Guys, it's got Lou Donaldson, Horace Silver, Curly Russell, Art Blakey, and most importantly to me, Clifford Brown lights this set on the fire. I feel like I need a freaking fire extinguisher in my room every time I throw this damn thing on. I mean, seriously. He is insanely good on this. I mean, he was insanely great anyway. But he was insanely great on this. And out of all the records I have featuring Clifford Brown, this one might be my favorite that features Clifford Brown. He is insanely good. And I think that had he not died when he died, chances are you'd be talking about Clifford Brown as the greatest trumpeter of all time. And I think a lot of people still do think he's the greatest trumpeter of all time. My personal pick's Lee Morgan. But Clifford's close. And if he had another at least 20 years, maybe it's not even close. But since I'm showcasing volume 1, again, this is original mono. Since I'm showcasing that, might as well showcase 1982, volume 2, which is my 1982 French press. The day I got this, I walked in, and evidently one seller, or one buyer, one customer, whatever, had brought in a full stack of French jazz reissues, for trade, for credit, for whatever. And I picked up like all of them that day. There was 1982 French press of this one, volume 1, which I ended up selling volume 1 when I got the original mono. And I will do the same for this one when I get my original mono of this one. Kenny Burrell's Midnight, Blue. I mean, there was a huge stack of them, and I picked them all up for a great deal. And this is the only one I still have left because I've replaced all the other ones with the original mono presses. So, anybody has preferably an original mono press, but original stereo press would do as well, but preferably original mono press of volume 2 Live at Birdland, holla at your boy. So, just figured I would run through 10 or 11, I'm not sure how many I had in there. Unbelievably awesome, in my opinion, live jazz records. Again, I stated it before, I'll state it again. There are no better live albums for me than jazz live albums. For me, it's not close. And I love listening to a live jazz album just as much as I love listening to a studio jazz album, which cannot be said for me in rock and roll. I have to really be in a very specific mood, and the live record has to be perfect for me to want to listen to live rock and roll. Full disclosure, because mostly for the main one, the crowd noise is obnoxious. It's not the noise, it's that kind of noise. It's obnoxious. And number two, the lead singer almost never sounds as good. Almost never sounds as good live as they do in the studio. A couple of exceptions, obviously. There always are. But for the most part, it's not as good. And don't even get me freaking started on bootlegs. Bootlegs are shit to me. Sorry, Dylan. Don't hate me. That's not to say that I haven't heard good bootlegs in my life. I have. I've had a few. Anyway, figured I'd throw one more lighthearted video. I didn't intend to do, but again, I was inspired. I also put together my first blog post in quite some time, which I will put the link for you guys for the blog post at the end of this video. A lot of it is a lot of what I just discussed, but some of it's something different. And so yeah, I've got a new Instagram post, I've got a new blog post, and I've got a new YouTube video all to go with one topic. And it's the first time I've done that. And so thank you for the inspiration, Brookvale Records 88 on Instagram. Thank you. Your one simple question. Because every now and then he and I discuss music, and that was just one that today that just struck a light bulb, and I got all Edison on him, and I just had to go for it. So there it goes. You guys forgive my voice. I've had a little bit of a cold lately. Everybody in my house has. I hope this still comes through clearly for you. So until next time, until next video, which will be part 3 of my Tales from the Nightclub series on the legendary Clifford Brown. Until next time, until that, keep dropping that needle, you guys.